Hey everyone, welcome to The Rational Life for June 19th, 2020, Juneteenth in America. As a Canadian, I was not taught this growing up, but it is Juneteenth. So, good show today. Several things. I'll talk about AOC. She has a new campaign ad out. Donald Trump is just being openly fascist now. Not all that surprising, I guess. Jamal Bowman leading incumbent Eliot Engel. I'll show you what's going on in that race right now. Also, Fox News poll shows Biden ahead. Biden narrows his VP pick to 2 cops. We'll discuss that. Also, Phoenix mayor accused of driving into protesters. You know, it's a Friday. And Trump administration completely failed to combat COVID-19. I'll show you the numbers in the U.S. right now compared to Europe. And other stuff, probably. Many links here, many things that I did not... I mean, what I do generally is collect a bunch of stories and then basically go up to the wire. Today was really up to like 3:05 in terms of figuring out what I can actually fit in to cover today. So maybe I'll, do what I did last week in terms of at the very end, sharing some of the stories that I didn't actually get to fully flesh out. But we will see when we get there. Also, of course, I'll take super chats throughout. I'm already seeing one roll in here. And a reminder, in case you didn't know, I am now doing a Twitch morning show from Monday to Thursday. Every week, it is 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. So just a quick hour of, it's very laid back. Sometimes I don't even go in knowing or having anything to really talk about, but I engage the chat. And I don't know, you can go check out the VODs on the channel, the ones that I shot this week. I think they're still there if you follow me or if you're a subscriber. So check them out. They're fun little shows. A lot of engaging with the audience. So I will do that on Monday. All right. Before anything else, of course, reminder, rationalnational.com/join to support the show. That always helps. That's the Patreon page. All the links are below the video in the description box. You can also support me on PayPal, through Streamlabs. There's other links there, I think. Also, of course, joining on YouTube is another way to support me. And, of course, super chats. As I already said, I will take them throughout the show. So first, since I already see a super chat here, I think it's just the one, but I will check later in case I missed anything else. Sean Skank? Is that your last name? I'm sorry. I'm sad the morning rash won't be the name of the Twitch stream going forward. Here's $5 so both of us can cope. Yeah. So I did change the name of the morning show. So I don't know. The morning rash, I can see it maybe eliciting some images that maybe, which was kind of the point. It was supposed to be tongue-in-cheek, but then because I was covering so many serious topics in the morning, including issues of police brutality and everything else going on right now, it just didn't seem right to have a very tongue-in-cheek name for the show when I was talking about such serious issues. But it is called The Rational Rise now, which is the name I was actually using before for a podcast that I think I recorded episodes for, but it was like 4 or 5 years ago that I don't even know for sure. My nose is itchy. I'm not even sure if I actually recorded episodes of that show, but anyways, it is now Rational Rise. So, also, I just want to say, I didn't mean to laugh at your last name, if that's your last name. I just didn't want to pronounce it incorrectly. Okay, so let me get to the first story here. So Tuesday, June 23rd is primary day in New York. And one of the many primaries that you should be out there to in voting for, assuming you're in the district, is for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who has a new ad out that is pretty good. So I want you to check this out.
Right now, New York is experiencing 3 concurrent crises. Crisis of health with COVID-19, the economic crisis of mass unemployment, and the crisis of racism in our systems of law enforcement.
The crisis in New York reaching a critical mass.
All 3 of these crises have something crucial in common. They haven't presented us new problems, but they've set on fire existing ones. But what if these broken systems weren't built to last in the first place? What if a better world is possible? These are systemic problems, and I'm proud to have been fighting for systemic solutions, like Medicare for all, a federal jobs guarantee, and the end to mass incarceration. Today is a big day for people who have been left behind. People are coming together in an unprecedented movement to build this better future and a better world. And whether it's delivering thousands of groceries to our neighbors, introducing transformative legislation, or standing up to corrupt interests in Washington, it has been the honor of my life to fight for the Bronx and Queens in the halls of Congress. And we're just getting started. It's time to bring the movement to the voting booth. And that's why I'm asking for your vote on June 23rd.
Hey. So that was pretty good. Just to reiterate here, her focus or what she brings up here, I think this is really how these sorts of candidates are able to separate themselves from everybody else in the Democratic Party. Focusing on systemic change and being able to really nail it down to, in this case, three separate issues. So healthcare, and AOC's focus on Medicare for all as a systemic change to that issue. The economy, and her focus on a federal jobs guarantee as a real systemic change to that. And also systemic racism and her focus on ending mass incarceration. So obviously there are various ways to do that. One of them being defund the police, which I believe AOC supports. But this is the real difference between candidates or politicians like AOC and, the neoliberal corporate Democrats that just tinker around the edges and really focus on, symbolism as a way forward without having to actually deal with the underlying issues, which often always, all roads lead to capitalism. It all ends up being that is the real issue with the system, is that capitalism incentivizes all of this sort of this corruption and what goes on in terms of the injustice in these various systems. So I like that focus. I like this video. It is important to be reminded that even though AOC is in Congress, there's still people challenging her, and it's important to get out there and vote if you are in her district, to go out there and support her. And also in terms of other races going on around the country, you may have a congressperson you like and you just assume they're always going to be there, but you really have to get out and support them to ensure that they keep their seat. So go out, support AOC, and in general, if you're in New York, ensure you are voting on Tuesday, June 23rd. Okay. Just going to open up the chats page, so I got that prepped. I do want to engage the general chat as well when possible, but I know sometimes it moves too quick. Right now it seems to be not too bad, but I will try to do that as well. All right, the next story for me to prep here. So Donald Trump is continuing to openly threaten protesters and doing it in this way on Twitter this morning, where he is, I mean, this is openly fascist at this point. There's no hiding it. So let me show you the tweet here. And, you know, people often try and treat Trump's tweets as not important things to really focus on. But when it comes to something like this, where he's actually threatening, real action, then you should focus on it. This isn't just, him saying some wild stuff that has no real impact on people's lives. No, this is something worth focusing on. So Trump tweeted out here saying, any protesters, anarchists, agitators, looters, or lowlifes who are going to Oklahoma, please understand you will not be treated like you have been in New York, Seattle, or Minneapolis. It will be much different scene. So, excuse me. The idea here that going after peaceful protesters, that is openly fascist. That is, so the First Amendment protects free speech and, the right to assemble. He is going after protesters here. There was no way around this. I mean, any conservative that pretends to care about free speech issues, you know who I'm talking about, the Ben Shapiro's, the Dave Rubins, if they actually cared, they would be out there criticizing this. But of course they're not. Now, just to add some context here from CNN, it was a turnabout from Trump's declaration earlier this month that he is an ally of all peaceful protesters. Do you remember that in his speech out in front of the White House, talking about he's an ally to peaceful protesters? Of course he's not, because during that speech, peaceful protesters were being gassed and shot by pepper bullets by the cops in the area. Though not necessarily a surprising one, given his repeated condemnation of demonstrators that, in some instances, turned violent. Later in the day, Trump's spokeswoman, Kayleigh McEnany, said the president was referring only to violent protesters, anarchists, looters, the kind of lawlessness that we saw play out before President Trump came out with the National Guard and calmed our streets with law enforcement. Of course, that's complete bullshit. We all know. I've covered countless videos now that I'm getting a little tired of it. Of seeing new ones because it's happening every single day. There's new videos of the cops instigating the violence, of them instigating and escalating the violence in the streets. It is not the protesters that are starting it. It is the police that are starting it. So this idea that the police are going to, knock the heads of protesters, all it does is serve to escalate the situations that are going on in the streets. So, for as much as I cover everything else when it comes to policy, when it comes to the failure of the Democratic Party, it is important to refocus at times on just who the president is and what he advocates for and why it is so important to get this man out of power, regardless of who's going up against him. It's not about, the other candidate. It's really about getting Trump out and ending the era of Trump because, you can't deny there is a clear difference here. There is a clear difference from somebody who has clear fascist tendencies to somebody who doesn't. And I think this vote in November is really about that, is ending the era of Donald Trump. Okay. It may be a quick show today. I'm speaking faster than normal, which is hard for me to do, as I already speak pretty quickly. But that's how things are going. I think I see a new chat here. Samantha Sider, Super Chat says, donate to Jamal Bowman and help him beat Eliot Engel. Yes. Yes, I agree. And I'm going to be doing... Oh, it's the next story. There you go. Perfect timing. So the next thing I'm working on is a Jamal Bowman video. So I'm just going to prep this quickly. All right, so there is a big race in New York's 16th district between Jamal Bowman and incumbent Eliot Engel. So this is in the Democratic primary. Eliot Engel is a 16-term incumbent. It's been there since the, I think, mid-90s. And he is just, I mean, the perfect corporate Democrat in terms of the money he takes in. And also, not just in terms of corporate money he's taking in, but also GOP money he's taking in. But before I even show you that, let me show you where the race currently is. So the newest poll here, latest poll out from Data for Progress, shows Jamal Bowman up by 10 points on Eliot Engel. Now, understand how big of a deal this is. Jamal Bowman is the challenger here. Eliot Engel's been there forever. He has the name recognition. Engel does. So you would expect him to really maintain a lead, a solid lead, and still have the potential of Jamal Bowman flipping when it comes to primary day. But here we are already seeing the movement on the ground. And if you think back to when AOC was challenging Joe Crowley, there was no poll showing AOC beating Joe Crowley. In fact, there was no poll showing her even within 30 points of Joe Crowley before primary day. But because of the work that her and her campaign put in, whether on the ground, also help from individual donors, small donors, helping her campaign create videos and that kind of thing, and really get the word out there. Because of all that hard work that she did and her campaign did, she was able to flip that 30-point deficit into a victory against Joe Crowley. And we are potentially seeing that here as well. Now, the difference here, as opposed to Joe Crowley, is Joe Crowley didn't see it coming. So it caught him off guard. They weren't really ready to properly fight against AOC. For the most part, Crowley was ignoring her. Eliot Engel is aware of the challenge. And part of the way he's taking up the challenge is by taking in GOP money. So I covered this recently, but it's worth repeating. GOP money flowing to Super PAC backing Representative Eliot Engel, documents show. So let me just read a little bit here to give you some extra context in terms of what is happening. The Super PAC is called Americans for Tomorrow's Future, following in the proud tradition of nonsensically named political action committees. The connections to the GOP are apparent enough that the Center for Responsive Politics listed as a Republican conservative PAC. The PAC's treasurer, David Satterfield, is a former aide to one-time Republican Senate leader Bill Frist. Satterfield works now at Huckabee Davis Lisker, a prominent firm that does election compliance and accounting work for Republican campaigns. This cycle, the firm is handling the accounts of the National Republican Senatorial Committee, National Republican Congressional Committee, and the campaign of Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, among dozens of other GOP operations. So this is where Eliot Engel, a Democrat, is getting a lot of his money from conservatives. Now, this is because, in case you're thinking, wow, this is crazy, it's because this is New York. So this is a deeply blue district. Whoever wins this primary is going to end up taking that seat. So if Jamal Bowman wins the primary, he's going to take the seat from Eliot Engel, or from whoever is in that race with them going into November. But so that's where the real fight is. So Republicans, knowing that, instead of sitting this out, they're thinking, well, in the case that we're likely going to lose the seat in November, we're going to back Eliot Engel, because for the most part, Eliot Engel is a conservative. He's conservative when it comes to his positions, especially on foreign policy. He's incredibly hawkish on foreign policy, and he's on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. So Eliot Engel has a powerful position in the House and has conservative positions when it comes to his policies. Now, let me show you a little more here. So, Justice Democrats put out a recent ad. So they're one of the big backers of Jamal Bowman, and I'll show you more endorsements that Jamal Bowman has later. But this is a recent ad they put out with Jermaine Williams, who's the public advocate in New York City. So check this out.
These streets are filled with black bodies abused by a plague of systemic racism. But these streets don't care, filled with the same old politicians pushing the same old ideas. We need a voice from our streets. Jamal Bowman, been an educator here for over 20 years. Jamal Bowman is our voice, and we will have justice. Justice Democrats is responsible for the content of this ad. These streets.
All right, so you see there, solid ad, 30-second ad for Jamal Bowman. I imagine this one's playing on television as it's set up that way as a 30-second ad. But this is one of the many ads that Jamal Bowman has. I'll show you a longer one. I've played this before, but since the election's a few days away, it's really worth highlighting this campaign and what Jamal Bowman is all about. So check out this one.
The virus hit our cities the hardest. Thousands die every day, most of them Black and Latino. People are losing their jobs and can't pay rent while Congress bails out corporations. We need leaders who understand what we're going through. I'm Jamal Bowman, public school educator for 20 years, the son of a single mom raised in public housing. Growing up, my mother told me life wouldn't be easy for people like us. That's why I've spent my career building opportunities for families in our community. Over the last 20 years, I've mentored hundreds of kids and supported parents who had to make the difficult choice between putting food on the table, going to the doctor, and paying their rent, all while our government continues to ignore them. That's why I decided to run for Congress. I asked voters about our current representative, Eliot Engel, and I hear one word across the district: absent. This is the worst crisis since the Great Depression, and people don't know where their congressman is? The truth is, he's never really in the district. He even called his home in Maryland his primary residence. He doesn't live in our community. I live in our struggles. He's taken us for granted. After 31 years of the same, it's time for a change. In Congress, I will fight for universal health care through Medicare for all, rebuilding our economy through millions of Green New Deal jobs, and protecting our immigrants from deportation. I'll fight to bring down the cost of rent and housing so families can keep food on the table and a roof over their heads. And unlike my opponent, I'm not taking a dime from corporations. Our grassroots coalition is doing everything it can to protect our communities in this crisis. We deserve a representative who will do the same. Vote for Jamal Bowman to be your next representative in Congress.
All right. I mean, this is a race to watch. And I mean, I showed you he's doing well right now in terms of being 10 points up, but it's the kind of thing where you have to get out and vote. You have to actually be there. You can't just rely on these polls and assume he's going to win it. If you're in that district, man, make sure you go out and vote. Now, I didn't plan this, but I did see a video from Jamal Bowman today that he put up discussing the attacks that he's been receiving from Eliot Engel. So what they have now been focusing on, since Eliot Engel realizes he's in a deficit right now in this race and polling, they've been going, in the gutter. So they're attacking Jamal Bowman over being a former independent. They're attacking him for the fact that he had debt, like millions of other Americans. So let me show you Jamal Bowman's approach to this, because if you're feeling down, you're having a bad day, go check Jamal Bowman's feed, because when he puts up videos, I mean, this man has energy. He's happy. Check out how he's responding to these attacks from Eliot Engel.
What's up, family? It's Jamal Bowman here. Hope everyone out there is staying safe and doing well and continuing to protest and resist police brutality and institutional racism. Just laughing, man. Congressman Engel doesn't have much to go on except these baseless attacks. First of all, a couple weeks ago, I was a communist. Then I was a McCain supporter who never voted for Obama. Now I, owe all these taxes. And all of a sudden I had a failing school, even though in 10 and a half years we've never been on the failing list. And we've been celebrated for our academic growth and all the work we've done in the community. It's crazy, because he hasn't run a strong campaign that's connected with the people and is built on deep relationships and love for the community. All he could do is attack and send mailers and take this dark money and and run these commercials. But the people know the difference. The people know we're rooted in love and support, and that will never go away. I'm running for office because I love our people, I love our community, and I love this country, and we're going to move it in the right direction. So, Congressman Engel and anybody else who supports that, just wanted to make this video for you.
All right. He then goes on to play some music, which unfortunately I can't play. Otherwise, I'd be taken down for copyright. But Bowman, check him out. Let me show you some of the endorsements he has. So before I even read through some of these, Eliot Engel, in case you're wondering who's backing him, Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton's only, as far as I've seen, her only endorsement in a Democratic House primary race has been for Eliot Engel, really showing you how terrible she is and has always been. Andrew Cuomo also backing Eliot Engel. And the Congressional Black Caucus, showing you where their interests lie, in corporate interests in the establishment. Jamal Bowman, on the other hand. So New York Times, which honestly is one I don't really care about, but I guess it matters. So New York Times, New York State Nurses Association, Just Democrats, Working Families, Sunrise Movement, Move On, the DSA, CPD Action, big progressive group, tons of big groups here. Let me go down to some of the names here. So Jermaine Williams, as I said, AOC, of course, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Katie Porter, Ayanna Pressley, Jessica Cisneros, Zephyr Teachout, Cynthia Nixon, Tiffany Caban, Naomi Klein. So yeah, Abdul El-Sayed, Marianne Williamson. Anyways, fantastic people, a lot of fantastic endorsements. Jamal Bowman clearly is the choice you want to vote for here. You can also check out his issues. He's a fighter, of course, for Medicare for All, for defunding the police, many other solid issues here. You can check it out on his page. But anyways, BowmanForCongress.com. When I cut this into a separate video from the live stream, I will put a link to it below the video, but you can find him easily. BowmanForCongress.com. Volunteer, support, donate, whatever you can. Help him win. This is a seat right now that is one of the most flippable seats possible when it comes to getting progressives in and getting these corporate Democrats out. So support Jamal Bowman. My throat is really bothering me right now. Like, it's not hurting, but it's annoying me in the sense that I have to keep coughing. But no, it's not COVID. All right, let me check the super chats here. I think I saw a couple. All right. Mark P says, how do you feel about Black Lives Matter protests concerning the spread of COVID-19? So as far as I've seen, like, I need science, right, to see if it's had any real impact. But for the most part, from what I've seen, it's outdoors. So that is obviously a lot better than being indoors. And also, most people, from what I've seen, are wearing masks. So if you're wearing masks, you're keeping your distance as much as possible, and you're outside, I'm not too worried. It's also, for the most part, a younger group. So hopefully people understand the risks they're taking. But, I'm not going to discourage people from protesting. Now, that is different from what Trump is doing in Tulsa, which I think I'll touch on briefly later. But Trump is having an indoor rally with 20,000 people, seated next to each other, no space at all. And knowing the conservative audience, I don't expect to see many masks. So when you have that many people indoors without masks, that's a real risk. Especially right now, you're seeing with Tulsa, their numbers are increasing in terms of people getting COVID. So I expect that to potentially spread the virus even more. But all this stuff is kind of speculation, but just based on the science, it is a lot less safe to be indoors without a mask than it is to be outdoors with a mask. Car Wash Freak 97 says we must get people to vote in the primary. Yes, that's where the real fight are in the primaries. Because once you have the candidate for the Democratic Party up against the Republican, you can't really fight for anything better at that point. So the fight is always in the primary. And also the fight is between elections, like building interests, in the 4 years or 2 years up to an election, building interest in the candidate or getting involved in local politics and local races, and just, informing your family, friends, and community. And that's how you really enact real change. If you just focus on politics around elections, you're missing where the real work is done. So the work has to be done between those elections. Andrew Dwyer says, New York Times endorses Bowman. What do you think led them to come around, since they seem to always support status quo politicians and wars? Engel is a war hawk. I think it was this moment. I think I just felt this spider on my foot. I've been seeing spiders everywhere in my apartment, so I'm getting really antsy. But I think so. Yeah, I think the New York Times endorsed Jamal Bowman because of the moment that we are in terms of the protests going on, in terms of the George Floyd. I mean, this is if New York Times is ever going to dissent ever when it comes to the Democratic establishment and the status quo politics, it's going to be during a time like this where they want to appear like they are occasionally on the correct side of history, which is almost never the case. But in this case, it is. So I don't know, of course, what actually drove them to endorse Bowman, but my assumption would be because of what is happening right now in the country. Junie McGraw says, I'm essentially a socialist and I'm voting for Biden, not because I like his policies, but because Trump is a divisive buffoon. Plus, we got people like Booker and Bowman running. Booker meaning Charles Booker, not Cory Booker. But yeah, Charles Booker in Kentucky. We're good comrades. Yeah, Charles Booker, another race you got to focus on. And he's also doing really well right now against McGrath. McGrath was the DSCC pick, the Chuck Schumer pick, and McGrath is not doing very well. She's getting pummeled because all the endorsements, both from in-state in Kentucky and outside of the state, are all going to Charles Booker. And again, Booker, another great candidate. All right, gonna pause it there as I fix my throat. Oh wait, two more here, since this one does relate to what I was just saying. Cyrus 1976 says, I live in Tulsa, but not close to downtown. Staying home Saturday. Lots of nuts here, I guess. Stay safe all. Peace and love, fellow progressives. Thank you for the message, Cyrus. Yeah, best to stay home, for sure. Mateus N says, here's some money for when it's safe to cut your hair. I recommend the Night Owl at Little Portugal. No. I'm not all that close to Little Portugal, so I likely wouldn't go there. But I am half Portuguese, so I would think about it. But I don't know when I'm cutting my hair. I'll be quite honest with you. It may grow. It may grow. I may not cut it for a while. So if that offends you, I apologize. But I just feel like it's already this long. Let's see how long it can get before it gets too crazy. All right. Next story here, which I didn't really prep much for this, but I do want to briefly mention this story. So there was a Fox News poll out, national Fox News poll, showing Joe Biden up by 12 points over Donald Trump. Now, this is completely in line with all the other polling we are seeing. So there's polls showing Biden up by 14, up by 13, up by 10. I mean, I think at this point, when you have both the pandemic and these protests going on at the same time, in addition to the past 3 years of Donald Trump, I think a lot of people have just sort of had it with this presidency. Now, as I've said before, I don't think Joe Biden's a great candidate. I think someone like a Bernie Sanders would have brought out more people, especially younger people, people under 45, that likely still won't come out for Joe Biden. But this election really is less about the Democrat and almost just purely about Donald Trump and ending the era of Donald Trump. And you are going to see, I think, an uptick in, a massive turnout when it comes to Democratic voters, even though many of them may not be on the younger side. There are a lot of people that didn't come out and vote in 2016 because they were told that Hillary Clinton was going to win the election. And I think those people are really going to come out now this year in big numbers for Joe Biden and are going to push him over the edge. And I guess there also may be a tiny sliver of Republican voters that also have had it with Trump. But those people, they're almost exclusively only on television. Those never Trump conservatives really only exist on TV, because we're talking about the extreme wealthy conservatives that in the past were Republicans, and now they don't like Trump's rhetoric, even though when it comes to actual policy, he's, completely in line with every other Republican. But they don't like the way that Trump makes them feel bad for being Republicans. So that's why they're on the Biden bandwagon. But if you look at actual polling when it comes to Republican voters and their feelings towards Donald Trump, Trump has, 95% of their support. So the vast majority of Republicans are not going to vote for Joe Biden. It continues to be a stupid idea for any Democratic candidate, president or not, to try and chase those conservative voters instead of chasing the actual 40% of the country that doesn't normally vote. Those people don't vote because they see two parties representing corporate interests, wealthy interests. So if you actually fight for that 40%, then you have a much better shot at winning elections. But this is a case where, regardless of who is on the Democratic ticket, Trump's going to have a hard time because there is so much anger towards him. And this election really has just become about getting out Donald Trump. And right now, every poll is showing that. Again, we're 5 months away. Things can shift dramatically. It's possible Trump fixes everything, by November. Everyone's singing Kumbaya and they vote for Trump, but it's very unlikely. So assuming that we continue down this road that we are on, I think Donald Trump's going to have a very tough time. Now, I guess the last question really is, will Trump leave if he loses? And this is something that's been joked about in the past. I know, Bill Maher has been on this since the beginning, but the more we see Trump's lawlessness, and just the fact that he doesn't care. He just doesn't care. It's all about himself. So if there is a way to somehow, fight the result or affect the result in a way where he wins, even though he loses, he's going to try and pull every trick in the book. And I think we're going to see that. So that's my only real fear with this election right now. Again, 5 months out, things can change. My fears can grow. But as we sit right now, Biden is in a very good place. Okay. Back to Super Chats. Eric sends a Super Chat in saying, what kind of hair product do you use? It looks very voluminous, sort of like a happy, well-watered plant that was given lots of natural sunlight. So some days I don't do anything. I just let it air dry. I brush it, but I don't put anything in it. Today there is wax in it. It's like it's semi-shiny wax. I'm not even sure what it's called, but it's got like mid-level shine, so it shines a little bit. And other days I just use what's called like after shower conditioner. So when you get out of the shower, your hair's still wet, you put this conditioner in, and that's it. So honestly, I really don't do too much, and I'm very lazy when it comes to like doing my hair. So if I don't have to do anything, I'm not going to. But I do think it looks a little better when I put something in it. So maybe that's why it's caught your eye. But thank you for asking. All right, next story here. This is probably the big story of the day. So bear with me as I prep these links. All right, I think I'm ready. So Joe Biden has apparently narrowed down his VP pick to a couple of cops. Now, more specifically, Kamala Harris, former prosecutor, and Val Demings, a former police chief. So this is news from Fox Business reporter here, Charles Gasparino. So he tweeted out, breaking, Dem sources say as of now, Joe Biden VP is between Kamala Harris and Val Demings. Despite Demings' lower name recognition, I am told that she has a legitimate shot. Insiders worried about Harris's record as a prosecutor that can be attacked by the left and Trump. Now, he appears to forget the fact here or not realize that Val Demings also has a record in law enforcement. So either way here, I mean, and really when it comes to Trump, regardless of who Biden picks, Trump's going to attack the person. But when it comes to, meeting this moment in terms of what's going on in the country with these protests, Black Lives Matter, a real focus on injustice and criminal justice, to pick one of two cops, I don't really think is the best idea. Now, as I've said in the past, I think this election really is about getting out Donald Trump. So regardless of who Biden picks as his VP, I don't think it's really going to hurt him because, again, the focus is going to be on getting out Donald Trump. But if it comes to, when thinking about the future, say Biden wins and we don't expect him to really be president for 2 terms based on where his age and his mind currently is. So when you think about the future and who may take over, either of these picks just are not adequate here. So first, let's do Kamala Harris. Now, instead of me going through her history as I've done before in other videos in the past when she was running for president, let me just, this sequence here during one of the debates, I think does it best. So this is Tulsi Gabbard challenging Kamala Harris on her record.
I want to bring the conversation back to the broken criminal justice system that is disproportionately negatively impacting Black and brown people all across this country today. Now, Senator Harris says she's proud of her record as a prosecutor and that she'll be a prosecutor president, but I'm deeply concerned about this record. There are too many examples to cite, but she put over 1,500 people in jail for marijuana violations and then laughed about it when she was asked if she ever smoked marijuana. She blocked evidence. She blocked evidence that would have freed an innocent man from death row until the courts forced her to do so. She kept people in prison beyond their sentences to use them as cheap labor for the state of California. And she fought to keep cash bail system in place that impacts poor people in the worst kind of way.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Senator Harris, your response.
As the elected Attorney General of California, I did the work of significantly reforming the criminal justice system of a state of 40 million people, which became a national model for the work that needs to be done. And I am proud of that work. And I am proud of making a decision to not just give fancy speeches or be in a legislative body and give speeches on the floor, but actually doing the work of being in the position to use the power that I had to reform a system that is badly in need of reform. That is why we created initiatives that were about reentering former offenders and getting them counseling. It is why, and because I know that criminal justice system is so broken, that I am an advocate for what we need to do to not only decriminalize, but legalize marijuana in the United States.
I want to bring Congresswoman Gabbard back in. Your response, ma'am?
The bottom line is, Senator Harris, when you are in a position to make a difference and an impact in these people's lives, you did not. And worse yet, in the case of those who were on death row, innocent people, you actually blocked evidence from being revealed that would have freed them until you were forced to do so. There is no excuse for that. And the people who suffered under your reign as prosecutor, you owe them an apology.
All right. So that really is one of the highlight moments from any of the debates. Tulsi Gabbard just really taking down Kamala Harris, and ultimately it's definitely part of what led to Kamala Harris not doing very well in the primary. Also, though, I mean, I don't want to retread these old conversations, but also Kamala Harris backing off of Medicare for All. Also, if you look at polling when that happened, that had a clear direct impact on Kamala Harris and her success or lack thereof as well. But Kamala Harris would have a lot to deal with if she were the VP pick. I mean, there's countless stories like this one from theappeal.org. Kamala Harris's criminal justice record killed her presidential run. So it goes through a lot of it and really details how that was a major part of the issue. So again, in terms of beating Trump, I don't think this is really going to be an issue. But when you're looking forward into the future, in terms of who may take over control from Joe Biden, these are things to think about. Now, Val Demings. So Val Demings, former police chief of Orlando. I did not know much about Demings, as she's fairly new to Congress. But going through some of her history here, and just based on what other people have said about her that do know her, she also is a risky choice when it comes to meeting this moment. So this is from The Atlantic. Again, all links are below the video. So when I cut this from the live stream, you will have a link to that below the video. But let me just read, a couple pieces here. So this first paragraph. The department has a long record of excessive force allegations. So this is in Orlando. And lack of transparency on the subject, dating back at least as far as Demings' time as chief. From 2010 to 2014, the department paid out more than $3.3 million in damages following at least 47 lawsuits alleging false arrest, excessive force, and other complaints against the department's officers. Records about these cases and other allegations of police misconduct in Orlando are not centrally housed or publicized, and some lawsuits are still outstanding. Okay, there were 4 more paragraphs, if I can find them here. Here we go. Back in 2008, an Orlando Weekly expose described the Orlando Police Department as a place where rogue cops operate with impunity, and there's nothing anybody who finds himself at the wrong end of their short fuse can do about it. Demings responded defensively, quote, "Looking for a negative story in a police department is like looking for a prayer at a church," she wrote in an Orlando Sentinel op-ed. Quote, "It won't take long to find one." Before I go on, I don't understand how that's supposed to be a defense. Saying, oh, it's so easy to find negative stories in police departments. Is that supposed to be a defense of what's been going on? So again, when it comes to, being in the public eye and having to actually engage when it comes to criticisms, if this is the Val Demings approach to criticism, it's not going to be very successful. But more here. In the same op-ed, Demings cast doubt on video evidence that conflicted with officers' statements in excessive force cases, writing, quote, "A few seconds, even a video, rarely capture the entire set of circumstances." The excessive force complaints continued throughout Demings' tenure. In 2010, an officer flipped an 84-year-old man upside down and broke his neck after the man became belligerent. Demings initially said, quote, "The officer performed the technique within department guidelines," but a federal jury later disagreed, awarding the victim $880,000 in damages. So again, showing you that Demings did nothing to really challenge the system that was in place and ultimately just continued it and defended it. So here you have, actually, I have more here. I'm not sure how much. I could read a lot more. Let me just get a couple more paragraphs here. This is from The Hill. But as Demings' star rises, some Black Lives Matter and other progressive activists are taking aim at her tenure as Orlando's first female police chief, which spanned 2007 to 2011. And they are questioning whether someone who spent a decades-long career in law enforcement is right for this moment. Quote, "While she was chief of police, I felt like public policies and changes to address community policing should have been done. It was not," said Luana Gelzer, president of the National Action Network's Central Florida chapter. "We've had a problem here for years. I will go vote, but I will not vote for her if she's on that ticket," Gelzer added. Biden needs to listen to the people of Orlando and of Florida and elsewhere, not law enforcement at this time. So there's more here. Again, links are always going to be below the video. But you have here two choices where either way you're losing. I don't mean the election, but you're losing in terms of the future as a future leader of the Democratic Party. So, like, the choices that I want to see, obviously Joe Biden is not considering Nina Turner, Barbara Lee. I mean, Barbara Lee is one that I think he would be able to at least envision, as opposed to Nina Turner, who I think he just would find would be someone who's going to challenge him too much, who obviously Biden doesn't want that. But Barbara Lee is also a good choice, also not being considered here. So to have the list come down to two cops, I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised, and I'm not really surprised. This is what the Democratic Party has done for years. It's all about symbolism. It's not about challenging the actual systems in place. It's all about, hey, if we got a black woman on the ticket, that's all that matters. Her record, what she's done, what she fights for, who cares? Will she fall in line? Will she continue this system of propping up corporate interests, propping up wealthy interests, of being just the lesser of two evils? Then great. That's all we care about. So that's what the party has been for the past 30, 40 years. It's what they're going to try and continue the party to be. But they risk, I mean, in 4 years, say Biden wins this election, in 4 years, they risk something, because neither of these VPs are going to be a solid presidential candidate. So, you know, we'll see if this is actually what Biden's list ends up being, if he does choose one of these candidates or politicians as his VP. But let's hope he reconsiders. Someone else mentioned Barbara Lee. Jesse. Yes. Yeah, Barbara Lee, for me, is an obvious choice. But who am I? Okay. All right, a couple super chats here. Debo, the Black Panther, says, "You do great work, my brother. Thank you for caring about everybody." Thank you. Thank you for your generous donation. Seth O says, "My job just laid off 30% of us, and we hear they now plan to double our workload. F these people, eat the rich. P.S. Love your work, brother." This is something I hear about all the time. I have a close friend, not going to mention his name because he wouldn't want me to mention him, but they've laid off people at his workplace, and essentially he gets their workload instead of and doesn't get a raise in pay. And we're talking about, this is Canada. So this happens because of the system that is in place. And he works for a massive company where the executives are making tons of money. And this is what they continue doing. Layoffs, 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 but keeping the same workload and putting that workload on the people that are already there. It is a disgusting system. And that is also, I think, part of the reason why you're seeing so many people in the streets. They aren't just fighting for criminal justice, but they are fighting how garbage this system is overall, how it's kept people down for so long in so many different ways. And you've mentioned one of the many ways that it does that. A couple more super chats here. Junie McGrath says, I have a lot of criticisms of Harris, but at least recently her Bernie and Ed Markey have led the charge of a $2,000 a month in the Senate, but Mitch the Turtle McConnell won't bring it for a vote. That's fair. I could have been a little more fair to Kamala Harris in that sense, because she has been, at least rhetorically, a little better and has signed on to that $2,000 a month bill. And she's attempting to make some at least rhetorical moves. I saw her on, I think it was Lawrence O'Donnell's show recently, talking about why the protests are in the streets and why they should continue even after the election. So she's at least trying to soften the blow a little bit if she becomes the vice president. She's gonna have a lot of work to do, though. I mean, she's gonna have to admit to the mistakes that she made in the past, because so far all she's done is just deflect. You cannot deflect when you were a top prosecutor and you acted the way that you acted. You have to come to terms with what you did, admit to it, discuss it, talk about how you were in this system. You didn't challenge the system. No one else challenged. It's fair to point out how no one else challenged it either, but you were part of that system. You didn't challenge it, and come to terms with that. People respect you if you can admit your mistakes, recognize what you did wrong, and actually show some real change in what you are now fighting for and what you are now going to do. So in that sense, I do think Kamala Harris would be a little better than Val Demings from what I've seen of Val Demings. Val Demings is still very fresh out of the police force. I just don't. If it comes down to those two, I would pick Kamala Harris over Val Demings. But again, why is that the list? The list could be a lot better. Themis and Thoth says, this is a mess. Identify politics. Identify politics? I think you mean identity politics is strange. It also diminishes the woman chosen. Yeah. But again, they have to make the case for why they've changed. So we're going to see, whoever it is, if that happens. Okay. I'm going to pause there on the super chats. Let me prep this next one. If you wonder why I keep burping, I had a Middle Eastern food for lunch, leftovers. So friggin' good. I could eat Middle Eastern every goddamn day. Delicious food. Especially as someone now who doesn't, I stopped eating meat, so falafels are pretty good if you can find a place that makes good ones. Falafels are great. All right. I already clicked that. Okay. So the mayor of Phoenix, Chris Luz, has been accused of driving his car into protesters, and it was caught on camera. Now, I want to make it clear here. this is not a case where it's as bad as even, when we saw the NYPD drive their trucks into protesters. It's not like he's going in to really hurt anybody. But clearly, as you can see from the video that I'll show you in a bit, there was definitely a lack of awareness here on his part at the very least. So I want to show you first when this came up. So this was at a city council meeting in Phoenix. And you have here the account from witness Michaela Johnston discussing what she experienced with the mayor.
So I decided to hold my sign up where he could see it. Stand.
I apologize for that blast of audio. Bring it down a little bit.
So I decided to hold my sign up where he could see it, stand in between the lanes so this man could see why we are here. He then proceeds to drive his car right past me, hitting me with the front left of his vehicle and again with the side view mirror. I couldn't believe this man would avoid slightly turning his wheel to not hit me. He then proceeded to try and drive through a crowd of peaceful protesters. That is when I decided to take out my phone and start recording. I was trying to get his license plate and any other information I could. That is when I learned that he was indeed the mayor of Phoenix.
Okay, so you see, or you at least hear her account here. Let me show you what happened. Now, as I said, it's a funny thing because, look, I don't want to downplay what happened here because it's still not good. But he also, as you're going to see, it wasn't all that violent. At the same time, it is kind of a crazy story to have the mayor of Phoenix drive his car into somebody that he does clearly at least hit with the side mirror, as you're going to see in a minute. But if you watch this closely, so he's in the yellow car. Yeah, it's coming up in a minute. So, Black Lives Matter protest here in the streets. If I put on the audio, he's a little pissed off. He's just pushing on the horn. So I think earlier he actually ran to the person with his yeah, so he slightly hit the protester here. I mean, if anything, honestly, the real issue here is that he's beeping like a madman. It's a protest. Like, they're not going anywhere. Like, what do you expect your beeping to do? And he appears to be the only one freaking out on the horn. So, anyways, this goes on for a while. And, clearly the protesters recognize this guy's a little nutso on the horn at the very least. So they surround his car. He gets a little angry. I think at one point he gets out of his car. But that's sort of the extent of it. Let me just show you, though. Apparently there is there's at least a call from one person on the council for him to step down. So Johnston, the witness, said that Luz was unfit to lead the city, with at least one council member agreeing. Quote, "I can't believe the actions that you took, nudging teenagers with your car, intimidating and threatening them for expressing their opinions," said Councillor Sarah Westover. Quote, "I think this is unacceptable behavior, and I want to call on the mayor to resign tonight." Neither Luz nor Westover returned requests for comment, but the mayor gave no indications he would resign at the meeting. So when it comes to resignation, I think there could be a deeper discussion. I don't know his history. I don't know what he's like as a mayor, so I'm not going to go too deep into that aspect of it. But just the fact that you have, a guy who should understand what is going on here, have some respect for the protesters, to be just wailing on the horn and at the very least nudging people in the protest with his car. I don't quite understand how you think as the mayor this is something that you should be doing when what you actually should be doing as a leader is being a voice for the voiceless. And clearly that's not what the mayor of Phoenix was doing here. All right. I caught one in the wild. Ivanovsky says, "I'm digging the mustache." There are a few of you out there, but all joking aside, yes. It's, you just got to get used to it. That's all. Just got to get used to it. Feel like it's a weird time right now, so it's time to do weird things. It's kind of my feeling. All right. Yeah, let me show you. Let me get to these COVID numbers right now. Okay. So, in case you forgot, coronavirus, COVID-19, still going on. I know there's been other things happening in the news, and we can often forget because it just becomes a part of our world, and we forget that this is still something that governments should be dealing with. Well, when you look at some recent numbers here, this from the Washington Post, coronavirus cases in the U.S. have not fallen as much as in the European Union. So the EU has about 445 million people. The U.S. has about 345 million people. So understanding that the EU actually has more people living there, look at the difference here. So this is coronavirus cases. This is a 7-day rolling average of new coronavirus cases, March 1st to June 17th. So you see here at the peak, similar, even though U.S. has about 100 million more people, but similar when it comes to daily new cases. And now, while the EU dropped off considerably, though they're still dealing with it, at about 4K a day, the US is at 23,000. And I mean, when it comes to deaths, I've lost count, but it's over 100,000. So this is, you're in a moment right now where there's a president that not only is basically doing nothing when it comes to the coronavirus, but is also encouraging a giant public gathering indoors, likely without masks for the most part, in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So there's a rally happening on Saturday in Tulsa. I believe the arena holds 20,000 people. Again, an indoor rally. And because they aren't going to force masks on people, though I think it's encouraged, they're not going to force it on you. When it comes to conservative voters, we have seen for the most part, most conservative voters or most conservatives are not wearing masks. And when you think about peer pressure, if you think about a conservative that may be a little more, inclined to wear the mask, but they see everyone else around them not wearing it, it's very likely that person also is not going to wear the mask. And understand as well, the mask largely protects other people from you, not the other way around. So if you're wearing a mask, it's not really going to protect yourself from other people. It's more protecting that if you have COVID-19 and are asymptomatic, it's largely protecting the ability for COVID-19 to spread as far and wide as it would if you were wearing the mask. So when considering this, I mean, this is a presidency that has to come to an end. And look, I know I don't cover Trump enough, and it's because he is just so obviously terrible. But this is when it comes to criminal justice, of course, and when it comes to the coronavirus. I mean, these are two major moments happening right now that Trump is both completely inadequate in his ability to actually deal with them. And you're seeing, comparing the U.S. to the EU and Canada right now, our cases are also dropping considerably. A few provinces essentially have no new cases. Ontario and Quebec are still dealing with new cases, but they're, at least I know in Ontario, we've had under 200 cases a day for at least a week, I believe, which is pretty good. So before we were averaging around 500, 400, 300 cases a day. Now we're under 200. So, we're dealing with it, and it's getting better. It's still going to be, it's going to be one of these things where it's going to be almost impossible to really completely eradicate it until there is an actual vaccine. But you can definitely limit exposure and limit the ability to spread to other people. And a mask is one of your best ways of doing that. And it's also a way to show people that you're not selfish. That's really what it's about. Because again, it's about protecting other people from you potentially having it. And even if you think you don't have it, just wearing it also encourages other people that may have it to wear the mask. So it is very important to wear a mask when you're out in public, especially if you're in any city where there's, foot traffic and people around you. So be aware of that and just understand that you have to continue to be careful. And this has not completely gone away. It's still spreading out there. And a lot of younger people now are also getting it a lot more than usual, than before, I should say. So you're not immune to this if you're young. Ensure you are being as safe as possible when you're out in public. Okay. All right, one more prepped story here, and then I may just hit some other links to show you stuff. But I want to show this. But let me grab some super chats first. Okay, where was I? Here we go. Car Wash Freak 97 says, if Biden chooses any top cop as VP, sorry, this sentence doesn't make sense. If Biden chooses any top cop as VP, is mid finger. Oh, there's like character limits, right? I think what you're saying is if Biden chooses a top cop as vice president, it's a middle finger. Yeah. At the same time, as I said, I don't think it's going to have much of an impact on this election, but it could in 4 years. Ken Clive says, what is a practical strategy to put up candidates who actually represent the majority of Americans who are mostly independent? So that's a great question. And really, you got to look at people like Jamal Bowman and AOC and Bernie Sanders. The focus, I think the main focus kind of has to be on the power of money. I know it's kind of hard still, I guess, as a politician running for Congress to talk about capitalism being sort of the root of all evil. So it's kind of hard to get into that at this time as a politician. But at the very least, tie corporate money to politicians. And that is a language that most people understand. Because if you look at polling when it comes to corporate power over politics, most people agree that corporations and the wealthy have too much power over politics. And they know that politicians are corrupted by that money. So if you start with that and work your way down from there, so talk about how, Medicare for all completely removes that for-profit interest from healthcare. So that is a way to really, that's in terms of just one issue, that's a way to both connect corporate power to politicians and also connect it to actual policy. So, yeah, I think starting with the power of corporations and money in politics is a way to appeal to the majority of Americans that don't normally vote or who are mostly independent. Gretzky R says, love the stash and hair and love the NDP and standing with Jagmeet. There you go. Yeah, check out my recent video on Jagmeet Singh. He called out a racist in the House of Commons, and guess who got kicked out? Jagmeet Singh for calling out the racist, not the racist. That's how politics works in Canada. Apparently it's name calling to call somebody racist, even though it's like saying you have brown hair. Saying somebody's racist is not name calling if they are racist. And in that case, the man he was calling racist is racist. But yes, NDP doing solid right now in Canada, has been a major factor in terms of pulling Trudeau to the left and bringing in ideas like the $2,000 a month, like the wage subsidy, like helping students. I mean, if you go down the list when it comes to what Trudeau and the Liberals have done throughout this pandemic, the vast majority of it has been influenced by the NDP. And that only can really happen in a minority government because Trudeau doesn't have, complete power as he did with the majority. So because he's in a minority government, he has to actually listen to the other parties to be able to pass anything and get along. So it's definitely good to see the NDP be strong right now. All right. So I'm going to pause there on the super chats. Always see a few more that I will get to after this next story that shouldn't take too long. All right, so I came across this tweet from USA Today, I believe. Yes. And this is essentially propaganda. I'm showing you this because I want you to be able to spot propaganda when it's out there. So in this case, it is propaganda propping up police, propping up the current system. Because what do they do here? They're highlighting, so USA Today, highlighting a police being kind to an American flag. So check this out. And by the way, the music's off here because it may be copyrighted. Gotta watch out for that stuff. But look, he picks up the flag. Police officer in Nebraska couldn't leave a fallen American flag on the ground. Oh no. The holder was broken, so the officer rolled up the flag. This is unbelievable. Who cares? Like, this shouldn't be news. But this is purely done to shift public opinion. Crap like this is only ever discussed, only ever shown because it's a way to be like, oh, look how kind this cop is being to a flag. Now, Mike Figueredo, my buddy Mike Figueredo of Humanist Report, made the fantastic point of saying here, imagine if police treated black Americans with the same level of concern, delicacy, and respect as that a piece of material. I couldn't say it any better myself. It is truly incredible what the media will do. And I mean, this is kind of the extreme of it. You know, there's propaganda that is a little less, a little tougher to catch. But this is just straight up total propaganda in a world right now where we are, you know, largely discussing how defund the police is the correct direction to go, seeing how much power the police have, looking at city budgets, how much money's put into the cops, while there's been cuts to healthcare, cuts to education, cuts to infrastructure. I mean, it is crazy the amount of money that's been poured into police forces, and most people didn't realize it. I mean, myself included. I knew there was, of course, an issue with criminal justice, but I didn't really realize to what level, in terms of money they were receiving compared to everything else. So defund the police is like the starting point. Forget, I mean, banning chokeholds. Like, what's that gonna do? It's already illegal to do what the cops have been doing in terms of killing black men. What is banning chokeholds gonna do? You have to start with taking their power away. That is the starting point, is taking their money away. So the only discussion at that point is how much defunding, like defund completely to abolish police or defund a little bit, or, you know, so that's really where the discussion is. But as long as the discussion starts at defund the police, then we're on the right track. And moving those responsibilities, like, say, mental health calls, domestic disputes calls, homelessness. I mean, moving many of these responsibilities that the cops have had historically, move that into other areas. Invest into public housing. Invest into infrastructure. Invest into education. Invest into public health. I mean, that is really the direction that these cities need to go. And so I'm just showing you this. It's also important to inform your friends and family, where, like, this is the kind of thing that, say, you know, my uncle might fall for, you know, watching, oh, look at this cop being kind to the flag here. Aren't the cops great? Like, this is the kind of thing that I don't want to, you know, I know I have boomers in my audience. A lot of you are fantastic, of course, but this is the kind of thing that generally voters over 45, over 50, over 60 tend to fall for. So because a lot of that generation watches their local news, only gets their information from local news or, you know, nightly news or CNN or Fox News, MSNBC, it's important to be able to spot propaganda when you see it. So if you're ever sitting with them and this kind of crap comes up, make sure to call it out and do it in a kind way. Don't be angry. People sometimes are turned off if you're too emotional about it, but bring it up, talk about it, be like, hey, what do you think about this? How does this make you feel? Do you think it's kind of weird that they're showing this video? So if you begin a conversation like that, a lot more people are going to be able to, become informed and be able to catch this kind of propaganda themselves when they see it. Okay. All right. That's it for my main stories. I'll have some other links in a minute, because I do want to mention Charles Booker and his race with Amy McGrath. But before I do that, let me check out some of these super chats here. Tavish asks, do you think there'll be a second wave? History points to yes, which is why it's been discussed so widely. And I guess you're already seeing it is in, I think it was like Singapore. There was a country where, or a city where they essentially eliminated COVID-19, and now they're actually seeing cases pop up suddenly. So I think there is a strong potential that there's going to be a second wave. But part of the thing with the second wave is you kind of have to get over the first wave first. And when you're seeing now the U.S., as I showed you earlier, continue to have the amount of new cases they are having, especially in states like Arizona, Florida, massive increases in cases. You can say they're kind of still on their first wave. So it's scary in terms of thinking how many people this is actually going to end up impacting overall once this is finally over and at some point there's a vaccine. So this is why you got to be vigilant. Zach Boyles says Trump has obvious satire. Let me get off of this. Here we go. Zach Boyles says Trump has obvious satire of CNN video flagged, censored on Twitter. I'm telling you, this will come back and hit us harder on the left later. Trump has obvious satire of CNN flagged on Twitter. I think Twitter's focus right now is sort of the massive accounts. There's countless misinformation from smaller accounts that are not being touched by Twitter. But Trump being in the position of power that he's in, it's a little, I guess, easier for Twitter to try and police that. But look, I'm not advocating for it. I don't think it's necessary for Twitter to try and police anybody's tweets. Not even necessary. I think it's destructive to actually do that, because I agree with you. It could lead to much worse censorship later on. So yeah, I am completely on board. Trump's tweets by themselves should be obvious how nuts he is in general. I don't think you need Twitter to remind you of that. And if you do, then it's a very slim chance anyone's going to change your mind. So, yeah, I agree with not censoring tweets. The Sing on the Left says, David, did you see the video where Dr. Fauci said they told people not to wear masks because they were scared there would be no PPE for nurses, doctors? Let me read that again. The video where Fauci said they told people not to wear masks because they were scared there would... I didn't see anything about this. My understanding is they are recommending masks. The WHO recommends wearing masks. What they do say is, so you have to be able to separate PPE from masks. Every time, at least in Canada, when I see the recommendation to wear masks, they always say non-medical masks. So yes, I agree, and so does everybody else in terms of who's recommending to wear these masks. They agree to, don't wear the N95 masks, because those are supposed to be, don't buy N95 masks. They're supposed to be for frontline workers. I agree with that. But you can look online. I made a mask out of an old t-shirt in 2 minutes. And it was no sewing, nothing. Just you have a strip of cloth and you have 2 hair ties. You can make a mask in 2 seconds. So that's the kind of mask I'm talking about. I agree with you in terms of not taking PPE from nurses, doctors. Yeah, of course. But you can wear a non-medical mask and still at least somewhat protect other people potentially from you having the virus. Okay. Junie McGrath says, I'm proud to be an American where at least I know I'm free. That's in all caps. To die of lack of health care, live in poverty, endure police brutality, medical debt, etc. Yeah. The freedom argument, conservatives lost out a long time ago. I mean, health care alone. I have several rants discussing health care and the BS idea that the current system is equals more freedom, that the private system is somehow equals more freedom. I'm not sure if I want to get back into it, but basically under a single payer system, you have true freedom because you're not tied, your healthcare is not tied to your employer, meaning you can change jobs, start a business, go back to school, get healthcare regardless, the same healthcare, same doctor, same provider. It's a single payer system. Go to any walk-in clinic, same shit. Whereas under the current system, where apparently you have freedom, you are tied to your employer. And you have to pay out-of-pocket expenses. And I mean, the endless BS when it comes to the American system. 45,000 people a year die due to a lack of access to healthcare in America. So even if you're lucky enough, I mean, some people aren't even lucky enough in the U.S. to actually have healthcare. But even if you have it, again, so many issues that come with it in terms of expenses and being tied to an employer and all that. So, yeah. And that's just healthcare alone. But yes, when it comes to poverty, police brutality, medical debt, a lot more to discuss there in terms of the lack of freedoms. All right. So I don't really have a story prepped on this, but I do want to share some things here when it comes to this race between Charles Booker and Amy McGrath. All right, so there's a big race in Kentucky in the Democratic primary for Senate between Charles Booker and Amy McGrath. So whoever wins this is going to go up against Mitch McConnell in November. And right now, even though Amy McGrath is the choice of the DSCC, which is the Senate campaign committee, that is basically the Democratic Party establishment, the corporate-friendly wing of the party, they've backed McGrath. But basically everybody else has backed Charles Booker. So let me show you where the race sits right now, according to Data for Progress poll conducted by Civics. So Booker at 44%, McGrath at 36%. And then you can look at the general, and McConnell wins either way in the general right now in polling, which, you know, if there's going to be a real focus on this race, a lot can change, especially when you're talking about Booker, who appeals to a lot of people who don't normally vote in the state. That is where the real strength is in terms of a Democratic candidate. It's not, you know, McGrath trying to play this game where she is essentially a Trump-friendly Democrat. Her argument has been against Mitch McConnell that McConnell hasn't done enough in terms of supporting what Trump supports. And I'm not being hyperbolic here. That's actually been her argument, that McConnell hasn't actually been strong enough with Donald Trump. So she has essentially been this pro-Trump Democrat trying to win this Democratic seat and trying to win the Senate seat over Mitch McConnell. But the real way you appeal to people is not by being Republican light. It's by being something that's actually different. And Charles Booker is actually different. He's a guy who's fighting for real people, real issues, and, you know, has been a clear voice in this race. So you're seeing him right now leading McGrath. I also want to touch on some other things, though, that McGrath has been doing. So McGrath apparently sued her elementary school teacher, her elementary school teacher roommate in small claims court over $116.77. Now, I haven't dived too much into this story because I kind of felt the headline gave it to me. But this is anybody that's that petty to sue somebody over $116. You want that person to lead you? I don't know. Also, McGrath is apparently not happy that Charles Booker's getting endorsements from out of state, like from Elizabeth Warren, for example. But what's hilarious about this is that McGrath's money, and the reason why she's even in this race, is because of out-of-state support, is because of Chuck Schumer, is because of the Senate committee. That is the only reason McGrath's in this race. And I wish I had it in front of me. And you know what? I may just search this up right now. In terms of the money that they're all receiving, McGrath's money is largely out of state. So if you give me a second here. Here we go. So, while on the one hand you have McGrath complaining, here, let me actually read her quote here. "I'm not part of the political establishment, even though she is. I've been an outsider my entire life. I am proud to have support from real Kentuckians across the Commonwealth, and I am certain they will decide for themselves who to vote for on Tuesday. They don't need senators from other states telling them what to do." So McGrath complaining that Elizabeth Warren backed Charles Booker over her. So, complaining these out-of-state endorsements. Take a look at McGrath and where her money's from. Her in-state support, 3.6%. Out-of-state, 96.4%. McGrath complaining that Charles Booker has out-of-state support. Meanwhile, Charles Booker only at 54% when it comes to out-of-state support. Majority, or not majority, but close to majority, 46% of his support is from in-state. And, I mean, you compare that to Mitch McConnell. McGrath's numbers are worse than Mitch McConnell's numbers. And this would be an easy attack line for Mitch McConnell against McGrath. Look at where her money's from. It's mostly from out of state. So you have here a clear difference between McGrath and Booker, and just the total hypocrisy when it comes to her fighting Charles Booker over getting out-of-state support. So if I can maybe quickly find an ad here from Charles Booker, because he's been solid. Here you go. Let me show you this one. All right, so there you go. What a great candidate. This is another close race to watch. Charles Booker. If you do not support him already, make sure you find him. Look up his name, bookerforkentucky.com. There you go. This is one to watch. And as I was saying, what stands out to me from that video is his ability to appeal to these voters in Kentucky that have been ignored. And a lot of polling, like when it comes to polls like this, understand a lot of polling often doesn't just simply can't take into account the amount of people that don't normally vote, because polls are often just based on voters that normally vote, reliable voters, so and registered voters. So by having someone who is able to appeal to that 40% that doesn't normally vote, that can really take you over the edge when it gets to a general election. So that also is very important to keep in mind. And also just understand that you're not going to win as a conservative light Democrat, or conservative light Republican, or Republican light Democrat, which is what McGrath is. So Democrats have tried this strategy again and again. And the reason why they keep trying and failing is because this is what the system encourages, are these corporate-friendly candidates. So that's why McGrath isn't challenging it. That's why the system chooses someone like McGrath, is because even though they know they keep losing this way, it is just what the system wants. They want someone who is going to be a safe choice when it comes to not challenging the status quo. So you want to challenge the status quo. You want to change things. And that's why you got to back Charles Booker in Kentucky. Okay. I didn't really prep that one, but I think it worked out. Let me grab some of these chats now. I saw a nice compliment earlier. If I can find it again. Someone said something nice to me. Hey, I grew up with no compliments, so when I see compliments now, I dig them. Blake Wiley said, "I watch your channel almost every day, and I want to say thank you for your analysis and your well-produced show is a fave. You're not hard to look at either." Sorry, just saying. Well, thank you. Thank you, though. I like seeing compliments from people that have watched for a while, and they're sending in their kind words. It means a lot. Thank you. All right. Are we done with the super chats? I believe we are. So let me grab some. If you're gonna send a chat in, do it now, because you got a minute or a few minutes. But there is usually a minute delay on this video. So if you're seeing me say this now, I said this a minute ago. So get your super chat in now if you want to give one. But before I go, let me just see some random stuff that maybe I can grab. Also, reminder, in case you weren't here earlier, I do a morning show on Twitch, Monday to Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern to 11 a.m. Come check it out. It's more of a laid-back, conversational show. I don't often come too prepared, though I have some ideas or stories I want to talk about. But I engage the chat, and it's a much smaller audience, but it's fun. I enjoy it. So come check me out on Twitch. Link is below the video. Twitch.tv/TheRationalNational. All right, some messages coming in here. I'm highlighted on. Let me see here. T. Hayes asks, will you stream the Trump rally tomorrow? You should do a chill Twitch stream. I would be down to drink with you. Coffee, of course. I don't know. I'm not sure what I got planned for tomorrow. Actually, I'm potentially starting a podcast that you may be hearing of. That's more of a weekly thing, more of a Canadian focus. since I know a lot of Canadians complain I don't cover Canadian stuff too much, but I mean, Americans shouldn't complain about a podcast, about this podcast, since you have so much content already. So depending on that, I don't know, maybe. Also, The Last of Us 2 is out now. So you're asking me to pull myself away from a new game that I want to play to watch Donald Trump. I don't know. It's one I got to think about, but I will consider it. I got to see what time it's at, though. What time is that? Is that rally tomorrow? Tulsa rally Trump. Apparently there was going to be a curfew in Tulsa that was rescinded. Okay, I can't find the time. Maybe somebody in the chat knows what time it's going to be. I'm not going to dig for it now, but maybe we will see. Rocket Reindeer says, "Hey David, can Trump use the pandemic for voter suppression?" He will try. I'm sure he will try. I mean, that is one advantage that he has, is conservative voters don't even believe the coronavirus. So they're just going to go out and vote, expose themselves completely, regardless. Whereas Democratic voters, not all, but I would say more, are more conscious of the chances of getting coronavirus and are more likely to stay home. But I think also Democratic voters, they want to get the man out. So they may push through that fear, wear their mask, go out there and vote. Also, we don't know what it's going to be like by the fall. It's, possible that maybe for the most part, coronavirus will be old news, but I don't know. I don't count on that. All right. I think I'm good. A lot of good chats coming in, but I gotta go. So here we go. It's 7 p.m. Central Time, which is 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Okay, so it's at night. All right. I will consider it. Because, I mean, it's pretty much going to be just me sitting in the corner, probably drinking coffee, and just like laughing, So I don't. It may be enjoyable to watch. I'm sure I'll come with the random comment if I do cover it, but we will see. So if I do cover it, likely it's going to be on Twitch, just because YouTube is a lot more stricter when it comes to covering live video from other networks. I could be pulled down because of that. So if I cover it, it likely would be on Twitch. Oh, coming in with the late super chat just in time is Melinda Ortega. What do you think about Crystal Ball's co-host on Rising? Yes, the man who I never know how to pronounce his name correctly. Sag something. I'll just call him Sagman. Yeah, the Sagman. Well, clearly he is at least conservative. I'll be honest with you. I've watched a lot less of The Rising since this pandemic's hit, not because of the show, but just because I've watched less progressive media in general. I've just been more engaged in kind of what's going on and following that and doing a little more reading and, so I don't have like an up-to-date history when it comes to that show. But I don't know. I mean, it's a show with a progressive and a conservative. As long as you go in knowing that he has a different perspective, I don't see the big deal. It's fine to have people on shows that have a different perspective. I will say, that show likely would not exist if he weren't on the show. You're not just going to see, a massive platform like The Hill give an entire morning show to just, an outsider, progressive, maybe sometimes socialist perspective. So that show exists because he's on it. that doesn't mean, I don't know. I'm not sure what the question is even rooted in. But yeah, I don't agree with him, but it's a show. It exists. And I think Crystal's great. So there you go. Okay. Sagar rhymes with lager, so it's Sagar. Okay. It's the two A's. The two A's confuse me. Or Sagar, S-A-W. I think the lager comparison I will remember a little more. So Sagar rhymes with lager. Okay. Maybe I'll internalize that now. But probably not. Okay, thank you all for coming. And again, follow me on Twitch below the video. If I follow that Trump thing tomorrow, it'll be on Twitch because of copyright problems with YouTube. But come check me out, and see you later. Goodbye.